Greetings. This is the commentary and sermonette on the song Seasons. 1983 is the date, and I have written on there old. What that means is somewhere between probably 79 or 80, 81, I would have written part of it, and then in 1983 there was a bunch of them that I completed. I also know, listening to some of my old tapes, that I came up with the chorus first, and once I had the chorus, then I had the verse part as far as the music, but it took a while to get the verses there. And of course, Seasons, as I thought about that, I mean, what better passage than Ecclesiastes? There's an appointed time for everything, and there's a time for every event under heaven. A time to give birth and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to shun embracing. A time to search and a time to give up as lost. A time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear apart, and a time to sew together. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. So that was the backbone of this song. I want to mention also the photography on this as far as the YouTube video. My daughter asked me to play a song for her, and she took this picture and she sent it to me, and it looks, look older, looked like I've weathered a few seasons, semi-dark, and I thought, that may be a good backdrop for this song. So with each season, I decided to go ahead and put another picture in there, and I started with the summer, and then I had a fall picture, then a winter picture, and then a spring picture. No real reason for it, but I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, well, summer, that might be a good one to start with, because, well, I had to change the location because somebody started playing basketball. I guess that's what a park is for. Well, I don't think I really planned this, but I started with summer because one thing that I've heard people say, and I've probably said it, is that we take our health for granted, or take good times for granted, or you don't know what you have until it's gone. That's true. I don't want to fight and contend with that, but I will say I'm convinced, because God has set eternity in our heart, which is in Ecclesiastes as well, that we feel it's right that we're alive, and it's right that I'm healthy. It's right that things are going well. It's right I can pursue what I want to pursue. So people say we take it for granted, but life says this is right. Death was imposed when Adam sinned, and all the negative events that we experience are coattails of this death judgment. We resist it, we fight against it. It doesn't compute. And I've said many times that I know people do not really understand they're going to die. And I can prove it in just a minute, because if you really knew you were going to die, understood you were going to die, if you even heard a rumor, a vague rumor of somebody physically coming out of the grave alive, you'd drop everything and find out if that's possibly true. You would investigate every nook, corner, and cranny of this earth to see if that might be a true account. And if so, you'd want to find out who that person was, and you would attach yourself to them. The whole Christian message, the whole power behind it, the whole stamp of authority is that Jesus physically rose from the dead. So I can prove to you that you don't really understand you're going to die, because you've never probably seriously looked into this for what it is. Even me as a Christian, I know this and I talk about it, and it was a motivator once I got into the Bible. But see, if I really understood I was going to die, it would really change my behavior on a daily basis, continually, moment by moment. Especially understanding that it's appointed for man to die once, and then comes the judgment. So I don't even get it, because I don't think we're built to get it. I don't think it computes, because it's imposed. So let's go on into the lyrics. I say seasons. Our life has so many seasons. I'm going to skip my first two verses, because that's straight out of Ecclesiastes. Then I go into one where I start throwing some things in. And I say there's a time to reach out, giving our very best, and a time to conserve, open, yet taking rest. can agree with that or not. But I've found we should always give our very best, and many times we're like a flame that is being consumed. And I've gotten burned out on a couple occasions, just so much activity. And then there's times we need rest. We want to be open, but we still need rest. We won't be going forth in haste or in a hurry. You can still get burned out without being in haste or a hurry, just because of the intensity of what you're into. So there are times maybe God gives us seasons for rest, and it'll be times to reflect. And I say there's a time for great risk and a time to count the cost. I don't know what the difference is between stepping out in faith or being presumptuous. So there are times to take risk where we do step out in faith. But Jesus also talks about counting the cost. You start to build something, you count the cost so you don't get half done. You can't finish and everybody mocks you that you started and couldn't finish. So somehow we need confirmation from God what direction we should go to where we step out in faith, willing to take great risk. And maybe it's not possible to count the cost on some things, but on some things we are to count the cost. Of course, I think he was talking there primarily about what it means to follow him. To become a Christian, you count the cost, make sure you know what you're getting into. No student is above his teacher, but each one after he's been fully trained. To be like the teacher is the goal. What happened to my teacher in this age? And I'd say there's a time in a brother's life to intervene. And there's a time to be in the closet for him and not be seen. We need wisdom from God. That's why I said seasons. We need wisdom from God in our many seasons. When is a time when we should confront and intervene in a brother's life or a sister's life? Brethren, general term for brothers and sisters. Or when to be just praying for them. God, open their eyes. He says he's going to scourge everyone he welcomes as a son. He's going to rebuke us, discipline us, and scourge us. Sometimes you need to let the disciplining and the scourging come and not be trying to force brothers and sisters to do what's right. So we tell them, we talk to them, but there's a time we just need to pray for them. And God, teach them. He's going to scourge everyone he welcomes as a son. The only reason he would do that is because we've gotten off, which means in sin somehow. Now, let me hurry on because rain is coming. There's a time to persevere and see the matter through. There's a time to let go and walk another road. Sometimes we need to dog things down. We need to fulfill our ministry in order that we might receive a full reward, is what we're told. We're not working for rewards, but he wants us to know if we're faithful and we persevere to the callings he's given us, well, there will be rewards. And there's no point even talking about them because they're going to be beyond our comprehension at this time. Hadn't entered our heart or mind, things God has prepared for those who love him. And I think these rewards are all going to be something we'll say, we've only done that which we ought to have done. All praise, glory, honor, and credit alone goes to the Son because we can do nothing apart from him. We're simply the branches on the vine. There's a time for silence and a time to warn. Major on the majors, minor on the minors. Sometimes we need to just let things go. Sometimes we need to confront and warn people to flee from the wrath to come. He says, have mercy on some who are doubting. Save others, snatching them out of the fire. And on some have mercy with fear, or mingled with caution is one translation, hating even the garment polluted by the flesh. I think that means you look into yourself so you don't get caught up in that sin too, if it's something that's really got a strong pull. So you have mercy on them, but with fear, watching to yourself. So there is a time for silence, but there's a time to warn. There's a time for mercy, which that's in there, and a time to scorn. Jesus said we're not to cast our pearls before pigs or give what is holy to dogs. There's a time that we are not to answer. We're to scorn. Jesus even himself, when they put him before Herod, he did not say a word to that man. And I believe that was the Herod that had John the Baptist beheaded. I don't think Jesus had any use for that man, period. You may not like hearing that, but there are some people that scorn, wasn't going to give him a thing. We need a lot of wisdom from God. I say, God, give us wisdom in our many seasons. There's a time to trust and not move at all. And there's a time to push forward, that being the shepherd's call. This is where we need to hear from the Lord. This is the way, walk in it, or be still and know that I am God. We work these things out between ourselves and the Lord. These are seasons, chapters in our life. There's a time to be seated in the lowest place, and there's a time to be displayed as a trophy of His grace. Yes, there's seasons. God give us wisdom in our seasons. There's just so many different seasons. Sometimes we do need to be seated in the lowest place. But there is truly a false humility where we're burying our talents. But who wants to put themselves forward? Me, me, me. But there are times God will open up doors for us that no one can shut. And it is God's will for us to be there. And at that point, you do what you're supposed to do. You speak what you're supposed to speak. You don't go into a false humility and apologetic. To be humble is also to be strong. Moses was the humblest man, the meekest man on the face of the earth. Jesus was all time the meekest man on the face of the earth. And you read the accounts of how he confronted the Pharisees, how he confronted his disciples, how he confronted demons. He was the man of men. We're to be strong, act like men. Let all that you do be done in love. So there's a time to be seated in the lowest place, but there's a time to be displayed as a trophy of His grace. There's a time to love openly, and there's a time to shun embracing completely. Well, I don't know what to say about that. Sometimes just a little pat on the shoulder can be all a person needs. But sometimes they need to not be touched. You don't go rushing in and violating a person's space. I have a lady told me the other day how when she loves, how did she put it? Hard. I love hard. Well, that's a way of saying she throws herself all over people and smothers them, and they have to run away. So there's a time to love openly, but it's got to be genuine, the real deal. There's a time to shun embracing completely. There's times of darkness or times of knowing why. Isn't that true? That's where we need to seek the Lord and ask Him if there's something we need to know or something He wants to speak to us to where we can know why we might be in these hard places. There's nothing wrong with asking. And there are times of knowing why. Now, many times you'll look back and go, okay, I get it now. You'll know why. Yes, there's times of great want or times of abundant supply. I've been in both. You probably have too. I got myself in trouble one time, single guy. The Lord had set me up and I blew everything and exhausted everything I knew to do. And it's almost like the Lord had said, enough crying and boo-hooing. Get up and gird your loins like a man. So I got up, packing my little box, and I was going to go sleep under a bridge. Landlord came, was standing at the door, and he started asking me a few questions about if I'd found a job. I said, no, but I said, I got I think there's something's going to come through, and blah, blah, blah. And he discerned very quickly that I didn't have any place to go. And he said, I have a little efficiency apartment over this little garage up there. And if you would paint this apartment that's opened up over here, that could be your first week's rent. Would you be interested in that? Yeah, I would. So I did it. He saw the kind of job I did. So he had another apartment for me to paint. That was my next week's rent. And that's all I needed to go ahead and get a job, and I got paid every week, so I was always able to paint. So there's times of great want, and there's times of abundant supply. And I'd encourage anybody to learn how to manage money and relate to money in a way where it doesn't master you, but you master it, and it's a tool. It's a tool to get yourself out of debt if you're in debt, keep yourself out of debt, and to keep the wolf away from the door, and then you'll be able to share and do things for people, and it will be easy. There will be things you can become a benefactor, but you got to have your own house in order first. There's a time we need to see our nakedness, or times we need to see our garments of righteousness. There are times we need to see how wicked we are and how hopeless we are apart from Jesus Christ. We need that conviction where we know we are sick and we need the physician. Well, we also at times need to see our righteousness, not where we get beat down so far that you're paralyzed and all that you can do is say, woe is me and how wicked I am, how can you use me? We're clothed with the garments of righteousness, Christ himself. There's a time we're weakened in affliction and a time we're bold as a young lion. So there are times that we are weak when we're damaged and we're hurting and we're not able to do anything but survive and breathe and ask the Lord to strengthen us. But there's times we're to be bold as a young lion. Those are different seasons. There's a time to stand with you, come what may. And there's times to flee the tempter's display. I'll put that in capitals, by the way, the tempter's display. I didn't want to, but Satan is our enemy, and Michael the archangel did not dare bring a railing accusation against him. I do think there will be a point at the judgment, or during it, or right after. There's a place in, I think it's Ezekiel, where it's like, we look and say, is this the one who deceived, who weakened the nations? Is this him? But we're not there yet. If we're at a point where we would be more powerful than him, so to speak, it hadn't come yet. So right now, we dare not bring a railing accusation against him or any of these angels. So I did put the tempter's display. That would be a reference to Satan in capitals. So there's times we need to stand where the tree falls, there it lies. We simply state God's way, we state his will, we state his design, we state his agenda, and whatever comes, comes. But then there's times we're confronted with things where we do need to flee, particularly the tempter's display. In other words, what Satan puts in front of us. Now this is another good one here. There's times when your counsel is meant privately. And there's times when your truth is to be declared loud as can be. That is very important. Sometimes God is speaking to us and it's not for public broadcast. He's trying to tell me something, trying to tell you something. And we're not to be imposing it on everybody else because it's directed at us. We need great wisdom in these seasons and in these matters to know what it is when God's speaking to us. I've seen this before where I am positive God was speaking to this individual about himself and he thinks it's about everybody else. Totally missed it. Now this is the very last section. There's a time to see God as the truest friend. He's with us. There's times to fear our Father's discipline and he will not be mocked. Do not be deceived. Whatever a man sows, this he will also reap. He will not allow his children to get away with things. Just like you wouldn't allow your children, hopefully, to get away with things that are destructive for them. The beauty of God as our Father is this. He disciplines us for our good. He says that our fathers, our earthly fathers, discipline us according to their pleasure or according to what they think is good. Maybe they're for our benefit, but many times it's because we've embarrassed them or we'll make them look bad or something about them. Or they don't want to be bothered. Whatever it might be. But God, he says he always disciplines us for our good. And it is only because of our sin. So there are times we need to fear our Father's disciplining because he will make the limb out of joint or whatever he has to do. I have a message on Samson. I ought to do it sometime. I'm just going to cut to the chase because I'm going to get rained on here. But God loved Samson. He's in the Faith Hall of Fame, Hebrews 11. And you look at his life and Samson saw a beautiful woman, a Philistine woman. Well, he gets in trouble with that. Well, then he saw this dead carcass, uncleanness or whatever. And he took the honey out and did the riddle. And you look and he saw Delilah and he fell in love with her. And if you go through it, it's like he saw this, he saw that, he saw the other, he saw this. Got in trouble, got in trouble, got in trouble, got in trouble. What happened to Samson? God's son. Well, when he messed up with Delilah, they gouged out his eyes. What kept getting him in trouble? What he would look at. That's God's discipline, Father. The reason I know is because Samson then was in that miserable condition, grinding in the mill. His hair grew back. They were making sport of him, and he came up there and into that banquet hall, and if you look at his prayer, he said, God, strengthen me just this one more time. He asked that boy where the pillars were, the center of this thing. God, please strengthen me this one more time, that I might be avenged of my eyes and get the Philistines, and he killed their whole leadership in one fell swoop, and he died with it too. His problem was his eyes. There's a time to fear our Father's discipline, and He will do what's necessary. Now, if you see supposedly saved people that are getting away with stuff, that is a bad indication. They may not be saved. God is not going to discipline those who are not His children, which means in Jesus Christ. They're not His. Like Jesus said, your father is the devil, and you do the desires of your father. God does not discipline those people. He's not going to discipline any of them. All it waits for them is judgment and punishment. No discipline, punishment. There's a time to be cradled by His deepest love and know Him as righteous avenger from above. I have that really together. I hope you can pick that up from the song. That would just mean when we have been violated. He says, beloved, do not take your own vengeance, but leave room for the wrath. That's what it literally says. Leave room for the wrath. They add of God because that's understood. We're not to take our own vengeance. There's times we need to be cradled by His deepest love, where we know that people are not going to get away with the violations that they've been able to levy upon us. Where we trust Him for that, and then we continue to do what is right. That's what He says in Peter. Therefore let those who also suffer according to the will of God entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right, or continue to do right. It can be translated either way, whether it's entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in Him doing what is right, or entrust their souls to a faithful Creator and you continue to do right. It can be translated either way. Both are correct. So there is a time to be cradled by His deepest love and know Him as righteous avenger from above. You know what will happen out of that? If we can get to that place where we do that, we might be like those in the Revelation that one of the seals were open and they're saying, God, how much longer? When are you going to take vengeance for what they did to us? Be patient just a little while longer. So there's nothing wrong with wanting God to avenge. But it also might be, in many, many cases, that when we get a glimpse of what is coming to them, we might say, you know, Lord, I really took a major hit, but I don't know that I want to see that person damned and in hell forever. God, forgive them, for they don't know what they have done. And we might actually move into a position of being an advocate for God to not judge them. So Christianity is amazing. We have so many seasons in our life. We need wisdom in these seasons. We need help from God to grow in these seasons. And we need to know that they are just seasons. We are passing through this age. We only go through it once. May God give you wisdom and power in each season that you enter into. And one thing I ask the Lord in many of these things, I don't want out of this a minute too early, but I also don't want to stay in it a minute too long. I want to learn everything you'd have me to learn so I don't have to repeat anything. So don't let me escape too quick, but don't let me linger any longer than necessary. So, like I always say, my friends, my brethren, listen to these great and mighty things from the Word of God, and you'll learn unfathomable riches and depths. And in all of these matters, there is indeed life in